From what I gather, my phone is working again because I erased apps that I don't really use on my phone. And so now I wanted to make sure I touch on something that I made a lot of notes on. I'll try to recall it from my notes. And thank the Lord Jesus Christ, while I was reading about the passions, try to do this without any kind of rancor. Anger is a poison, and pride is an incredibly powerful sin. So pride, being now that it's considered a wonderful thing that you should march and declare your pride and your sexual proclivities, that self-esteem, it was because young women, during my time, it was young women were getting pregnant as teenagers because they didn't have self-esteem. They didn't understand something about themselves that was really great. And because they didn't understand how awesome they were, they would have sex with boys. So it was really that a generation older than mine simply warped the very ideas of virtue itself, saying that, well, the reason why you have bad outcomes from enjoying the bodily passions is because you don't have enough vice. You aren't sinful in thought enough. You aren't prideful enough. You don't have enough of such esteem for yourself that you see yourself above the natural course of things. That, of course, when you're at your most fertile as a teenager, you're bound, when you have sex, to get yourself impregnated. That's the normal human condition. And it's this idea that the modern period and modern man and modern women after World War II, really after World War I, are not bound by anything. They're not bound by any of the normal norms of humanity any longer. That because we have running water and electricity, something that actually, say, in a good portion of Eastern Europe, it wasn't until almost the 1950s that, Hungarians would have publications printed in Hungarian that Hungarians could read. You need all those things. Somebody to know the language, to have letters for the language, to then take information and print it, to have the whole publishing apparatus. In America, we had it. If you look up Gloria Steinem, famous feminist, and did all this great stuff for women, but she couldn't have done it without the open help of the CIA, which she admitted. She admits this. She really has very elaborate admissions on how the CIA helped third wave feminism become not just a popular thing, but then when George Bush was running for president, the first George Bush, when in my youth, after Ronald Reagan was out of office, because he was the vice president, that Republicans actually did not want George Bush to become president. They had other people. I think it was Bob Dole was contending with him. And the joke was that George Bush was called Rubbers Bush because he supported contraception and birth control, which was really something that made him, tipped him over the top, because people who had been Democrats during the 70s and during the Carter administration, one of the things that we're not told about the 70s was how the far left had bombed thousands of police stations. There were riots regularly in major cities. Crime had shot through the roof in major cities. It was not very dissimilar to what we see now. That's why there's all these dystopian movies during that period, shortly after that period of time, like Escape from New York. This was what the late baby boom actually saw in the prime of their life. This is what the early baby boomers saw and had no way of really dealing with, because so many of them were really not terribly fond or interested in far left-end politics. It was proven to them how silly such things were, because of really, the hippies were never popular. Steven Crowder's been correct about looking at what records actually sold during the 60s, and the far crazy, wild, and crazy psychedelic music. That's something that somebody like me, a DJ, collects. It's a curiosity. There's a reason why Tarantino's movies have all these songs that are so great, but you've never heard before. And that sometimes some parent will be like, whoa, that song, and it's because they were niche pieces of music. You really had to know the music of the time to know about, like, the nurse whistling down the hallway. Do, 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 do. You had to know about Hey Mr. Chick Habit by March 4th. Or I'm sorry, April March. April March is her name. And all kinds of this super hip music. It wasn't normal. People are only really young for about 4 years. You get out of high school, and around 22 to 24, you have to make some serious decisions about your life. So a lot of you women have been fooled. You've been completely bamboozled, and now your own allies are defeating you completely and totally. Now many of you are afraid of going out at night. You are scared for good reason. You are now enslaved by this social stigma. Did you get your vaccination? Which now, just today, we're finding out that the entire country of Israel, which is like absolutely 70%, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, 70% of the adult population is inoculated. And now they're finding out that this Delta variant, people are just getting reinfected with an illness that they never developed. The most fundamental T cells. Look up T cells. The defensive cells of your body, that their own natural immunity can't defend themselves from an illness that could not even infect children. It's so weak it can't even infect children. Most things that prey upon any species, any living group, will go after. Like wolves will go after the young and the old because they tend to be weaker. And those in their prime, we're finding out in, say, America, are widely not accepting the inoculation. But are you? Because you love your mask. You're all praising each other for dressing up in almost niqab, beyond hijab, like you're dressed up in niqab. You're looking like ninjas now, dodging people, running across the street so that you don't pass some man who doesn't have his mask on, because you might get the deadly virus, even though the likelihood that you'll die from it, or that you'll even be hospitalized from the present horrible virus, you would have to be over 40 or have, for some strange reason, a very, very weak immune system. So now you've been completely defeated. The social scene is falling apart. People don't trust each other. And you're seeing from now people like Kevin Samuels, Fresh and Fit, the explosion that the manosphere has gone through, that somebody like me, I called it. I realized, no, this is the rule. Nothing changes until you women are totally, completely miserable. And then at some point, the young, fertile women say, I'm not going to do what these old, lonely women say. And it's going to come to like this ultimate point where, it really will be that there will just be there will be so many old cat moms and dog moms and wine heads and pill heads that you will finally just say, this is so sad. I'm not doing it. Even on Fresh and Fit now, women are saying openly, strippers are prostitutes. OnlyFans is just a way of getting prostituted. I actually have to, the reason why I praise Brittany Venti all the time is because of how she has just so openly said, if you watch porn, if you entertain it, all you're doing is supporting prostitution and really keeping that industry going, and that it's an international industry. Yeah, and that it's the oldest business. And so then there's this thing of fighting the patriarchy, and you have all your allies, all your young political female friends who aren't sure if they're asexual or duplosexual or legosexual, or or if they're just a block of wood, or just like a blob, whatever blobosexual, whatever it is. And so now those of you who are pretty and actually could get a man, some man wants you, desires you, it, he tries, and you love spurning it, because you're sure you could get better. Somewhere deep down, you have such self-esteem, that this guy who obviously wants to have conversations with you, he wants to be around you, you can get better than that. You want the guy who doesn't want to be around you or something. If you could only convert him, if only you could turn him to veganism, so that his immune system is exceedingly weak and his body becomes a dad bod within no time after being with you. Whatever it is, whatever very strange thing, it's just self-esteem. If you could just ruin a guy who's above your social class, really. Not even sexual market value. Sexual market values, it ties heavily with social class. And many of you are of normal social class. You're a completely average middle-class social class. And your allies, this movement of the allies is mostly a thing that really is middle class. These odd sexual fetishists, these men who pretend that they're women, either slightly or completely. They're this tiny little group that you have to side with, because if you aim for a higher social class and you fail, then you truly feel defeated, you feel very humiliated. But because people who are sexual minorities, or whatever you want to call it, they're fundamentally lower social class. They know it. This is why they act towards society with such obvious rancor. They obviously despise other people. That's why they want to convert everyone's children, as the Gay Men's Chorus had said. That you look at the Gay Men's Chorus, you look at pictures of them, and they're very strange and very unattractive men, and they're probably, they are a lower social class inherently. Ethnic minorities, black men, Latinos, almost every ethnic minority sees the sexual deviance as the lower end of their social class. They don't fit in. They can't be trusted among men, and that's the key to men and men's social class. Even sexual market value is that other men find you valuable because they could trust you. You have honor. And when men can't trust women, you drop in social class. You just don't know it. Now, the beauty of it is nobody's really trying to tell you or convert you. They're just ignoring you. They're just going for what's better. Women of a higher social class, women who will actually be frank and honest, and that shows. They aren't distrustful. They come from a higher trust. They come from a high trust end of society. That is a higher social class sign. That's a sign of a higher social class. That you can be more honest about what you desire, about what your goals are, about what you really want. People of a lower social class are predatory upon their own, are deceitful and conniving and sneaky. So sneaky women are of a lower social class. When you see there's the problem within the black community of this, and it's because the black community is starting to greatly separate the lower end of its society with the higher end, and that there's very little in between. This is also especially on the West Coast, and you're seeing it among white America with the soft secession. And soft secession is the separation of social classes. The deceitful, conniving, untrustworthy white people are ending up in blue enclaves, and those who are productive and able are separating and seceding to other regions of the country. And this will keep continuing. It doesn't matter what you want. It is what it is. That is what people are doing, and even ethnic minorities are doing this too. And so this is just going to keep on going. It's not going to get any better for you. You're going to have to make a decision. Like my teacher's grandfather said, is you don't have a problem, you haven't made a decision. And so many of you are, you will inevitably make your decision. And so you might end up finding that it's more fun to be around this lower social class, that they have to, drunkards, laggards, the passionate people who every once in a while they'll just flare up, burn things down. That's not odd. This is really something also that, because we won't discuss this because of social class. This has happened before. This happened in the 70s. This, to some degree, this happened at various times during union workers' riots and stuff like that. I believe in the 20s was when we saw it before. People will be able to probably put it in the comments of various times of riotousness, and even during the colonial period. A lot of people think of the founding fathers as normal. No, they weren't. They were a very small group of people who were educated and could do all that. Everybody else, they were mostly, if they weren't farmers, which was not very normal during the colonial period, honestly. What most people were just kind of colonials. They were just people just around doing different kinds of work. There's actually, Renegade History of the United States by Thaddeus Russell. He gets into, during the colonial period and the colonial period, I believe, that every man, woman, and child in New York could walk out of their dwelling, and within less than probably a 2 to 3 minute walk, find a place to have hard alcohol to drink. People, the colonies were practically a party. We just don't want to discuss it. We don't want to discuss our history as people pirates and privateering. Nobody wants to discuss why there are light-skinned black people. They desperately need to discuss this as, the horrible raping that was always going on. And that's not half as much as prostitution. And that at one time there wasn't really a stigma about race mixing. Because there just was no culture. There was no America yet. That didn't even really form until you start getting, the enough people that you can get what are called the territories, like the Appalachian Territory, and people like my ancestors who established the first Catholic Church in the territory of Kentucky. So, and that's that's the late 1700s. The colonies had been here, already for 100 years or so, in various forms. Matriarchy isn't really what you might think it is. Matriarchy really had to do with who was the head mother, who was the mother who had produced the men who were the most powerful. And that power really came from violence, not sharing and caring. What the sharing and caring was that most women, of course, would not be able to bear many children. There wasn't toothpaste back in the day. There, even features, good health. This wasn't really that normal. People reproduced as best they could, had the kids that they could, fed the children that they could, but really, the women who are on top, we see even from biblical examples, which we've tried to shun, but we're finding out more and more that a lot of this was actually loosely, historically true, accurate, but really that Robert Briefolt, who most of the manosphere is familiar with because of Briefolt's law, that really what you end up finding is that matriarchies were really what's called a motherhood, and whoever had the sons who were the most brutal and most vigilant at brutalizing other men and raiding other villages before there could be land agreements and minted coins and ways of purchasing land so that there was an agreement. This parcel of land is yours, this parcel of land is mine, as demonstrated by Abraham when he buys Sarah's tomb for silver from the locals. He didn't steal it, he bought it, and they said in perpetuity, and because that was honor. They were a high trust society, and they understood the value of silver. He came from a society that had silver, Babylon. And so a lot of you don't really understand that the value that really all the motherhood put on you was, can you bear children and survive? Can you bear men who will steal things from other people? And that's what matriarchy is. That is what you're seeing, and especially the Black American community, is the devolution to a motherhood society, who is the mama who has the kids, who are the most physically brutal and fearsome, rather than a high trust society where you have that the young men are deal makers. They can cultivate trust in others. They can make people go along with their ideas, make a deal with them. This is really fundamentally why so many people on the left of center and their kind of low social class, low trust culture hated Donald Trump, because he would make deals. He made it. It was very clear to them what they were seeing. They were seeing a guy who made it by being capable, and that the talents he had completely elude them. They don't know how to be that way. That it takes discipline to do that, and you could see where his discipline was not. Discipline was not with women, and then there was all these relatively low trust, low class, but dressed up nice and go to church kind of people on the right who didn't like him for this reason. Oh, he's divorced, yada yada yada. But they would forgive almost anything of any woman or any preacher, and so they showed really what they were made of, and that's why so many of them have been really rejected. That part of the culture on the right is being rejected. These people putting on airs, because when you put on airs, it shows you are dishonorable, and you're not really what you say you are. You're not high social class. You're just putting on the airs of somebody who is high social class. That you should be frank and be what you are. And if you're normal, you should be glad you're normal. If you're average, you should be glad you're average. You should be glad for that, because God has been merciful and has allowed you to survive and live, and you don't have to be one of the cons, constantly threatening city after city. If you don't give in to me, I will flatten your city so flat that my horses will ride over it and not disturb a stone. Can you imagine a world like that? That's most of the world. Most of the world still operates along those lines, and most of you just don't know it because you don't pay attention to crime. You don't pay attention to the Bureau of Justice statistics and who's raping who. You don't really get that your allies are people who are just getting over on you, and now you've given them sometimes your whole life, your entire youth. A lot of you have given them money, and the money has vanished, There's no BLM members who are standing on the corner guarding the hood from the killers. There's no group of feminists and male feminists and Antifa who are helping go through all the rape kits and test them using the science that you all believe. You've been completely defeated, and now men are replacing you at the Olympic athletic level and even on the cover of swimsuit editions of magazines. They're beating you in beauty contests. You've been completely defeated, and it's just very, very disheartening. And I've tried to think this through so that there's no rancor or anger, no laughing behind my sleeve, and I really have sat there and I've thought, yes, God is incredibly merciful. He's incredibly merciful. I would not have survived to this age without his tender mercies, and I mean that quite literally. I would have died shortly after childbirth if not for God being merciful. And so I hope in a way I could pay this. This is a kind of, I don't know if I'll ever meet somebody who I'll get married to or anything like that. I'm an old man now. Not 50, but I'm kind of old. So it doesn't really matter so much to me, but a lot of you're young, and you still have some time ahead of you. And there's even some of you women who it's maybe you realize that, I don't think I should have children at my age, but you're so afraid of men, you're so bent and twisted around by your allies and people who taught you things. But did you know any of what I was saying about history, about the 70s, about the colonial period? Do you even have a capacity to care? That's its own thing. You should think that one through. Do you have the capacity to care if you've been fooled? Which means you were wrong, and it's humiliating to be fooled and to have your youth stolen. Well, there we go. I've got to stay on my purpose. Take care.